welcome to Broadcast Map. This is the show. I cover the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams. Here is your host, Ali Musa. And a very good Thursday evening to each and every one of you listening here. Either you are listening to us live on the audio stream, you're watching us live on YouTube or on podcast, whenever you happen to be listening. However you are consuming Craig and myself, this is excellent. I'm so happy to have you here. I am Ali Musa, joined here by Craig Needles from the Classic Rock 98.1. He also is I believe Craig does afternoons as well as the Craig Needles podcast. Craig, I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for joining me on this Thursday evening.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you asked me. And I'm sorry for the scheduling mess. I coached a t-ball practice today, and a game with my son. And it was a busy kind of crazy day. So thanks for ending your day with me and being cool with me for timing. I appreciate it.
No, you know what? Even when we do a part two, I'll always accommodate you. Cool,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. So I want to start by. I want to talk about a little bit of Jay's stuff here. Now, your thoughts overall on how the season has gone. And now we did the most recently, I think we should start with the Alek Manoah situation again, who is going to be, it looks like he's going to be out due to he had to leave the previous game there due to discomfort or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Manoah thing is tough, and he had worked really hard to get back, and the results had been mixed since he'd been back. But it would have been really cool to see a situation where he could have continued to progress here and not see some issues coming with his elbow. So we'll see when he's able to get back on the mound, hopefully sooner rather than later. But it sucks that he had worked so hard to get back. And again, the results have been mixed, but the things were maybe trending in a decent direction, a surprising direction. It sucks that he's now going to have to be on the shelf a little while.
But now, do you think though? Do you feel that there was some conversation last year that some had felt that they rushed him back? Did you feel that he was rushed back, or
not really? I think that they didn't have a ton of other options for the rotation until Hyun-Jin Ryu came back. So I think that, hey, let's just see if Alek can get back from AAA and be an effective big league starter was as good an option as they had as any last year. And really that didn't wind up costing them that much. Like they were never going to win the division. So it was a matter of, which road wild card team were you going to be? So you give Manoah a couple of starts to see, and it's fine, and clearly could have cost them. But I was fine with the way they handled that last year, and even this year I'm fine with the way they handled it. Obviously, the right elbow discomfort is a problem. I think that's unrelated to his location issues that he had been having previously. We'll see what this MRI says, and we're still waiting on what's going to happen with that MRI. But I think that they've handled him well. It's a bad break for the organization that he went from being a very solid top front of the rotation starter to guy who can barely stay in the major leagues seemingly overnight. That was unlucky. Maybe he was closer to getting back to it being a decent big league starter before this all went bad. But it sucks for timing and sucks for him.
Yeah, and I think too but I think though, I mean, I certainly kind of feel that the image on the organization now, it's, throughout this whole Shapiro and Atkins regime, I feel is really looking, it's really painted a not so good picture here for them.
I agree. I think that they are pretty bad at public relations. I think they're pretty bad at explaining their plans to fans.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the job. Shapiro, not so much. Shapiro, I think, is a pretty good communicator. Atkins is just legit bad. And I think that's part of what goes on with this issue is, hey, we are struggling And fans are frustrated by that. And the people whose job it is to communicate to the fans, they're not very good at it sometimes, especially Atkins. So I think that adds to the fan frustration, adds to the angst surrounding the team. And if this is the end of the road for Ross Atkins, if he's done after this year, and if they fail to make the playoffs with the 9th highest payroll in baseball, he probably should be done after this year. That's fine with me. There have been enough reasons to let the guy go that it's okay for me to say, all right, man, you can just you can move along here and we can figure out somebody else to go be the GM.
So you don't feel Shapiro is going to go with him? Because
no, and here's why.
Okay,
there's a couple reasons. One, I think he's very clearly a Rogers whisperer. The people at Rogers seem to like Shapiro, and they're working together. And two, Shapiro's job, obviously, he has to answer for the baseball stuff, but his job mainly in the last little while has been the stadium thing. And the stadium thing has gone really well. It's been good. So I think they're going to, over at Rogers, give Shapiro at least one, all right, here's your fire the GM card, and then we'll see what happens. You can hire a new GM, new front office direction, and go from there. They're going to give Shapiro one kick at that particular can, I think, before Shapiro goes. I understand why people want Shapiro to go. You want to say Atkins is a bad hire. He made the hire. He should be fired. That's understandable. I just don't think that's what Rogers is going to do.
No, I don't think so either, because I think you sort of you touched on it there, that I mean, I think they could say to him, well, but couldn't ownership also go on the other side and say, hey, your job, we brought you in to do the whole stadium stuff, and now that you did that, you got all that done, they kind of don't need him anymore. Yeah,
there's part of that. And I will say this. Rogers put what into those renovations? Is what, $500 million, three to some crazy amount of money. I'm not sure exactly what it wound up being. I think it is at least $300 million into those renovations. If this turns into a ball club that nobody wants to go see for the next couple of years, after Rogers put that kind of coin into the building, that's an awkward conversation that Shapiro is going to have. And I don't know how that's going to go or what that conversation is going to sound like. But maybe there's going to be an argument to lose Shapiro, even if you're happy with the stadium thing. I just think the way Rogers is going to do this is they're going to say, Mark, you're firing your guy Ross, you're figuring something else out, and if things do not turn around on the field quickly, this is on you. I think that's the way it'll go. If Atkins loses his job, there's time for the Jays to turn around this year. It's only May, but they've got to get going soon.
Yeah, and I mean, but and look at that. And what kind of got me. You know what? Was that whole press conference during the long weekend? Like, what was that all about? And I listened to that conference, and he just kept. And I don't understand his sort of thing. He just kept cutting reporters off and tried to finish their tried to finish their questions. Like, what is this about? Like, are you not just your job is to listen to what people are asking you?
Yeah, I know. You get the questions and you decide to answer them the way that you see fit. And that's one of the reasons why Ross Atkins sucks at this, is he's bad at news conferences. And that's why I think the team knows that Ross Atkins is bad at news conferences. They realized that he had to talk to reporters at some point. So they said, hey, let's do this on the Saturday of the long weekend. That's I think they wanted to take the number of eyes off of that. Here's the other thing that I bet you that Rogers would have really liked to have seen. I'm sure they would have loved to seen the Leafs win a playoff round. If they score in that overtime against Boston, that takes all the pressure off the Blue Jays. But that's not the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's certainly it too. But I mean, if they're going to But, I mean, the whole thing, I think, now becomes for the Jays. Now, they only got, the only thing that they did during the offseason really was the two things. I think the Justin Turner thing really was okay. I think that was fine. But then they got Isaiah Connor-Falefa in there.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If you want to go out and go sign Isaiah Connor-Falefa to a 2-year deal, and he was the only guy that they acquired all offseason to hit, and you got a 2-year deal. Because Kiermaier got a 1-year deal, and Turner got a 1-year deal. It was 1-year deals all over the place, except for Isaiah Connor-Falefa. And he's been better than I thought he was going to be at the plate. He's still a below-average major league hitter, but he's been better than I thought he was going to be at the plate. But if that's how you're going to spend your resources on Turner, on Connor-Falefa, and on Kiermaier, going into an offseason when you know the team struggled to score a year ago and your only plan was, hey, yeah, we're just going to hope that Springer and Guerrero and Bichette hit better. Well, not so much Bichette, but Springer and Guerrero hit better. That was a bad plan, and that's clearly coming to fruition. Guerrero's been pretty decent lately, but it's still a mess because they were counting on regression to help them, and that's not what's going on. So that's awkward because they voluntarily went into the season knowing full well that they were going to be below average at a few spots offensively. They volunteered for that. And this is the result you get when that occurs. It's, well, we just hope that Kirk and Guerrero and Springer are going to hit better. You have to do more than hope because they've got a lot of guys that are scuffling right now and struggling in a big way. Kevin Kiermaier's OPS plus is at 70, which, Kiermaier was never going to be a superstar with the bat, but you would hope that he'd be closer to being in the 90s somewhere as we get into May here. Kirk is still sitting at a 75 OPS plus. Kirk's a nice pitch framer, but there's not a lot going on with the bat, and there hasn't been for 2 years here. Vlad has come around lately. He's looking good. Bichette's, looking all right. He's looking a bit better lately. He needs to continue to be better. But it's been messy. Connor Falefa is 109 OPS plus. If you had told me before the season started that Isaiah Connor Falefa was going to have a 109 OPS plus on May 30th, I would have said, oh my God, the Jays are going to have one of the best offenses in baseball. And that is not what's going on. They have one of the worst offenses in baseball. So a lot of guys having very ugly years. And you got to start at least asking the question, hey, how come so many of these guys are playing so badly?
Yeah, that's it as well. And I mean, and during that press conference, the one thing that Atkins, he kept repeating this thing. He's like, quote, we trust the process and this and that. Mm-hmm. And John Schneider's been great. And quote, that's pretty much all he said during the whole thing, no matter what anybody asked him. Yeah,
it was the same answer over and over again. Yeah, we think these players are going to be fine. We're seeing signs, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, we got to do a little better than that if you want the fan base to be a little bit less pissed off. And that's clearly not what Ross Atkins accomplished in that moment.
No, exactly. And I think, too, where, certainly, and I get, too, that Shapiro was hired at a time that the Jays really weren't. I believe he was brought in before Alex made those deals to make that play out and push to the playoffs.
He was brought in kind of after Anthopoulos did the all-in push in 2015. Shapiro was officially hired, I believe, in August, and then took a couple of shots at Anthopoulos for the way that those deals went down, which is odd to me because if you look back at those 2015 deals, they didn't really miss out on any sort of elite big league production from all the guys that they moved in those deals. And there's a very memorable season that came from that, where with any level of luck at all in the American League Championship Series, at which they did not have very much, the Jays would have at least gone to the World Series that year, if not further. The bat flip lives forever. Those deals that Alex Anthopoulos made were 100% worth it. You do it 10 out of 10 times. But he took some shots at that, and I think that Shapiro coming in, and the first thing he did was, oh yeah, these fans had this team that they loved, and there was August and September of 2015 were as fun as anyone who's a Blue Jays fan has ever had cheering for regular season baseball. And for Shapiro to come in and kind of shit on it right away, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's all allowed here.
Okay, good. For him to crap on it right away, I think that got him off on the wrong foot with fans, and that got this entire crew off on the wrong foot with fans. Then Anthopoulos is out the door a couple of weeks later, and these guys were behind the eight ball PR wise as soon as that happened, and that's on Shapiro. He was part of that, so he has to lie in the bed that he himself made.
I think so too, because I think where it sort of shines, where it kind of it goes into effect here is that I think where they look at, he came in, and I think that's and there were sort of things that he was trying to, that he would blow it all, that he would blow the team up, but that they would blow it up, but essentially that isn't what happened. I think they were expecting to come in and make that a full blown rebuild.
Yeah. and they got competitive a little faster than they thought they were gonna, which is great. And they got competitive faster than they thought they were gonna because Anthopoulos left behind Guerrero and Bichette. By extension, left behind Bichette. It was Anthopoulos' guys who wanted to draft Bichette. Keith Laws reported on this, saying that the Atkins guys and the guys that Shapiro and co brought in, they didn't want to draft Bichette, and the other guys thankfully won out. Either way, they got competitive faster than they thought they were going to, but they've made mistakes within this competitive window. And even if you want to chalk up some of the playoff stuff to luck, at some point it's a result business, and the results have not been there, certainly in the postseason. We'll see what happens the rest of this season.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Yes, and we will take a quick break, and come back with more Craig Needles. You are listening to and watching Broadcast Map. I wonder if I could make it. It's almost getting to 8 o'clock p.m., and I am still a few more steps away from home to get to my computer to listen to Siena Radio's Cosmopolitan Culture Club. The best of the best music from around the world. Can't wait. I think I made it. Siena Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time.
Looking for conversations on books and more, as well as tutorials on using your favorite devices and applications? You've come to the right place. Join us weekly on Spicy Techy, where Ali and Siena provide insightful conversations, as well as useful tips and tricks to help you along on your technological journey. To learn more, tune into the show and like the Spicy Techy Facebook page. Search for Spicy Techy.
What a busy traffic on this Friday evening. I am almost stuck in this traffic for the last 40 minutes. And there is no way, I think, for me to get to the show. The Siena Radio Song Bank, which is going to start very shortly. It's one of my favorite shows. And my, what a way to wind down for the weekend. Perfect 2 hours of fun-filled music. And she has so many great features. Sound of Music, Undercover, Foreign Exchange. Name That Tune. And the big wheel that she spins for Who's That or Where Are We? We cannot forget about the international stage. I have never come across such a great show in my life. I think I will have to press hard on my accelerator and go as fast as I can to get home in time. Wow! Wow! Look! I made it! I am almost there! Siena Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time. I have to say, like, as the Leafs kind of, now as the Jays sort of move toward, I mean, they then, of course, Ross and Mark rebuilt that farm system a bit. And certainly now, and they've tried making things competitive. But do you think Alex should have been given more of a chance to stick around?
Oh God, yes.
I think so.
I like that. That to me, like, as much as you might want to talk about how much you love what Shapiro's done with the building or whatever, blah blah blah. The Jays had a better general manager in October of 2015 than they've ever had since.
Yep.
Like I don't understand how that's even debatable at this point. Like, look at what Alex Anthopoulos has built in Atlanta. And I know that some would say, well, he inherited this, that, or the other thing in Atlanta. Yeah, that's true. But he's made a lot of really good decisions there. He's made a lot of real good choices. And this is the result that the Braves have had, that the Blue Jays have had since then. Like, I think it's very clear that Alex Anthopoulos should have remained general manager of the Blue Jays. And the fact that he is not is to the detriment of all involved. And did Edward Rogers screw that one up? Did Mark Shapiro screw that one up? I don't know. Doesn't really matter which one of them was. It was somebody, and this is the result.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly if they now, like, I think though this year, but see, the competitive window is closing too. Now.
Yeah, you could argue that.
Yeah,
you could argue that. What they do have is good pitching, and that's not going anywhere. So they can figure out this hitting thing. They're going to be all right. But yeah, you could argue that this particular competitive window, once you have to start paying market rate, free agent level rate for Guerrero or Bichette or both, hypothetically, maybe, hopefully, we'll see, that you're going to have to pull back some payroll resources that are going to other places. And that is troubling. And you look at Springer's contract as an example, and I don't think George Springer is going to continue to be basically a replacement level player the rest of this season, but we're in year 4 of a 6-year Springer deal. So that means that there is time left on this deal, 25 and 26. He's making a little over $24 million. So that's a big matzo ball hanging out there if you're trying to keep an eye on payroll and be competitive, if this is what Springer has become. And there was always going to be kind of an ugly tail end of this where Springer is making this much money at ages 35 and 36. I don't think anyone expected it to get this ugly this fast, though. So that's not great. We will see what this looks like going forward as far as these guys readjusting and maybe becoming, closer to the hitters that we've hoped they would be, and they have been earlier in their careers. But yeah, you could argue that there are some really, really tough decisions coming for the Jays as soon as, maybe not necessarily this trade deadline, but certainly this winter.
Yeah, and I think too, where this is all going, in my mind, I think it's going to be interesting because, and I mean, the Leafs are an interesting example too. They just hired Craig Berube recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fine. Like, if the guys are available, that hire's fine. It's not like super exciting, but it's fine. I would have loved them to have been able to get Rod Brindamore, but he was never actually a free agent, so that was never an option. But the Berube hire's fine.
And I think too, where the Leafs sort of, but they've been in a similar cycle as the Jays have been.
I think the Leafs have been run better than the Jays recently, but the results have been similar. Whereas, like, okay, in the regular season it's fine, and then the playoffs it gets a little bit messy. The Leafs do have a lot of flexibility this offseason. There's a lot of big decisions to be made around there. I don't think it's necessarily a fait accompli that they are going to move on from one of the big 4 guys. I think they might give that another year just because they don't have a ton of options. But we'll see, and we'll see how things go with them the next couple of weeks, because really we'll know by end of June really what the big decision with the Leafs have been, if they're going to be making big trades or whatever it is. But I think the people that are looking for big changes might be disappointed, is what I'll say. There may not be a whole ton going on that way.
Yeah, and I think certainly where the Jays kind of go from here, I think is where, I mean, the Leafs. I think it's going to be one thing though. I don't know if I like. Do you see Shanahan being extended though?
I don't know. I think that they're going to just have him be a lame duck president going into this season and then take a look and see. Because you now let Shanahan hire a third GM, essentially, if you count Lamoriello, Dubas, and now Tree Living. And they're going to want to see some results from that third GM. And we'll see what happens this year. That GM has now been able to hire his own coach. That GM will have another full off season because Tree Living didn't have a full off season last year. He gets a full off season to implement his stamp on the team a little bit. I will say this for Tree Living that he's got going for him. He appears to have hit a home run with a draft pick in Easton Cowan. And if Easton Cowan can be, a decent option to provide some depth and a little bit of sandpaper down the lineup and some scoring touch as well for an entry-level contract the next 3 years, that's going to make Brad Tree Living's life the heck of a lot easier. So we'll see what they're able to accomplish. I think that they've got some optionality this summer, like I was saying. We'll see what they're going to do with it. But I think again that the people who are expecting huge, massive, sweeping changes, they may be disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. No, and yeah, I don't see. I mean, I do see them moving Marner though. Do you see them moving Marner?
So that's complicated because here's the things as far as the strikes against the Marner move. One, he's got the full no move. So if he doesn't want to go, he's not going. Two, moving Marner while at the very same time becoming a better team for the 25 or the 24-25 season. That's a tough move to make. So I'm not exactly sure if that's the way that's going to go. And Marner and Berube, there's the photos of them already sitting down, having a coffee together in Toronto. Who knows what they talked about? But if Marner really wants to stay, Marner's going to stay because they can't just trade him. Marner wants to go. Marner's going to go. So really it's kind of up to him as far as what the next steps are. And they're going to be in tough when it comes to getting somebody who can provide as much impact as Marner does in exchange for essentially a year of Mitch Marner. That'll be an interesting part of this offseason too. If you're going to make a move with him, what kind of move is it? Do you trade for not like distant futures, but do you trade for some guys that might be cheap ads to help your team in 24-25, or do you trade for veterans? Like, I don't know what options they're going to have, but I would not be shocked if Marner sticks around, put it that way.
Yeah, and I think too, and that's it. I mean, certainly though, I thought that was a very interesting press conference between Pelly and Tree Living. There were and Shanahan where, and I mean, he said all the right. I think that he said all. Shanahan. This is the first time we've heard from him that everything's on the table. This, that. I think he finally now is at a point where he has to understand what's going on here.
Yeah, you'd think so. I think that Shanahan's got to know his job's in the line going into this year. His job has to be on the line. How aggressive that makes him, I don't know, but his job's in the line, so we'll see.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, certainly now. Yeah, no, and I want to kind of talk a little bit now about I want to talk a little bit about maybe a couple of news stories here. There have been some there's certainly been. What do you think of health how can the situation of healthcare be improved in this country?
Well, that's tough.
Is
for starters,
privatizing it the answer?
Not entirely. I'm willing to listen, but not certainly go down this path. I'm willing to listen on some private options, but not privatizing the entirety of the system. I think that we have to at least try completely reshaping the system before we do anything drastic. And by reshaping, I mean, use London Health Science as an example. We have hundreds of thousands, in some cases, millions of dollars that are being thrown overboard every year because of poor choices surrounding executives that have been hired, unaccountable boards, and people who are in this clearly for the cash and clearly for the perks and clearly for the trips and not in it to actually run a hospital right. And I wish that we could just, and I know this is fantasy world stuff, I wish we could just fire the bad people in the system and hire good people to replace them. I think that the system might work okay if that's something that happened. And the province, did a decent job as far as keeping this up with the system. If that's not going to happen, it's not. I'm okay with the idea of a privatization conversation. I'm okay discussing it, but I don't trust this government to do it in a way that doesn't suck. And that's where I'm at. Is I think this government will do a lousy job with it. Will the other major Ontario parties do a better job? Probably, slightly at the very least. But I think this government would do a lousy job. So that's why I think that major changes right now is not the way you want to go.
But I mean, certain things do have to be addressed. I mean, like the doctor shortage, of having a hard time finding a doctor. Those things I think need to be addressed.
Yeah. That badly need to be addressed.
Yep.
Badly need to be addressed. And sadly, those things that you can't even throw money at those problems and have them go away.
No.
And you need doctors that want to practice here. You need nurses that want to practice here. There's a shortage of nurses. Now, part of that is because of the province screwing them around on wages. But there's a shortage of people who want to actually be nurses and short of people who want to be family doctors. That you can't even just throw money at to make go away. That's just a legit problem. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see how it goes. But I am I'm not optimistic about the healthcare system, and I don't know exactly how to fix it, but I'm not optimistic.
No, and I think that's it too, right? I mean, you see stories of that all the time of people who there are some private options. I mean, I was reading something in the Star a couple days ago on it, and I think it was an interesting where it was sort of basically talking about that some people they've waited quite a long time for for answers to their conditions and this, and I think that sort of thing. I think if there was a system in place that answers and proper testing could be done to diagnose certain things, I think that would be, I think it would be certainly a bit of a step in the right direction.
And you know what else I'd want to try?
Yeah.
I'd want to try some things that take some of the weight off the system, i.e., think about how many resources every year are taken up by people who are going in and out of hospitals, in and out of ERs, because they're dealing with poverty, because Ontario Works and ODSP is way too low. If we were to stop putting that strain on the system, how much more effective would the system be? Now, you're going to get some disagreement with that as far as, people who are experts in the healthcare system, and that's fine. Some people would say make a huge difference. Some people would say not that big a difference. I think it'd make enough of a difference that we should sure as hell try it. And that should be maybe the first thing we try and do, because that is one of the easier ways to go about it. Okay, how about we make it so people are less frequently going to the ER by making it so they're not homeless, by making it so they can afford to have better diets. And I know that some of these things take a long time to actually make an impact on the system, and I get that, but I would want to try those things before we're talking about blowing up the healthcare system. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, and do you feel that in some capacities ODSP, do you think it'd be do you feel it would be beneficial that it be increased a little bit? And if you feel that it should be, what is the reason it should be? I feel it should be, but what's your take on it?
My take is there's a lot of reasons to increase ODSP and Ontario Works, and I'll go through a couple of them now. And I did a panel on this not long ago with United Way, and my friend Dr. Jeff Preston was there, and some other experts. There are a lot of reasons to increase this. One, you'll see some positive impacts in the healthcare system we were just talking about. Two, you'll see some positive impacts in the criminal justice system where you'll find ways to save some money. Three, you'll see positive impacts in people's lives. Four, you will see positive impacts in communities. Because if money goes to people who need to spend it to eat and need to spend it to have the basics, they are going to spend on those things. And that is going to help local businesses. There's a lot of reason why increasing ODSP and Ontario Works is the smart financial decision and the more ethical decision. And we've had successive provincial governments here of both the red and the blue variety who have done a lousy job with this. and this is the result we get. And it's frustrating to me, and I bang on this drum every single provincial campaign. And the Green Party, at the very least, is listened, which is good, and I'm glad. The NDP sort of had to be dragged kicking and streaming here. We'll see what the Liberals come up with for the next campaign. Bonnie Crombie, when she's on my podcast, said that she'd be willing to double Ontario Works and ODSP. That's good. That is badly needed. We'll see if that's something that comes into play and happens in practice as opposed to just campaign talk. But it needs to happen.
Yeah, I know, it really does. In all honesty, it does need to happen because, see, and kind of to add to that a little bit, like, see, like, you look at like, I mean, you did touch on it a little bit too, but look at the cost of everything. Like, look at the cost of even like rent. Look at the cost of
rent is just insane. So look at this right now in the province of Ontario.
Yeah.
Rent is clearly massive, hugely out of whack, and a single person can receive up to $1,308 a month in ODSP benefits. Yeah. So let's think about that. $1,308. And if you're going to live in a lot of places, that's going to be mostly taken up by your housing allowance, right? The number of dollars that you pay to live someplace. So that doesn't leave you a whole lot for food. Doesn't leave you a whole lot for transit. Doesn't leave you a whole lot for clothing. Doesn't leave you a whole lot for maybe hydro if you're having to do that. Paying for internet, paying cell phone bill, all these different things. Doesn't leave you a lot for that, or anything really for that.
Yep.
The stress of going through that weighs on people, and I've talked with people on my podcast about this. It's a stressful thing to know that you're not going to have enough because you're on ODSP to make it through the month. It's frustrating as hell. So I think just getting out of that mess is worth some money to the province as far as the positive impacts it's going to have here in Ontario. It's not going to solve every single problem we have, but it'd be a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and that's it, right? Because, see, I mean, if you take, see, and, like the, like things like, like the internet and all that, and the cell phone, these are almost like essential things too.
Oh, yeah. Like, cell phone, I think it's fair to call it an essential at this point in our lives. Internet, I think it's fair to call it an essential at this point in our lives. And a lot of jobs, you want to say to people on Ontario Works and ODSP, oh, you should have a job. Some of these part-time jobs requires you to have internet at home. Yeah. So, like, that's part of the conversation here too.
No, it is, because, even like, see, all, like, I mean, even all the things that, even all the things that I do, right? I wouldn't be able, if I didn't have access, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, of course. So I think that there's definitely been some horrific mismanagement of this file. Again, from multiple provincial governments. We're talking about Harris, Eves, McGuinty, Wynne, Ford, Geneva Premier, all five of them that have been Premier since Harris/Rates. They own this. And I am annoyed that we are continuing to be in this spot, and I hope that someone becomes Premier in the not-too-distant future who understands that OW and ODSP rates being as low as they are is quite frankly abhorrent.
Yep. Yeah. And what about the carbon tax? What are your thoughts on the carbon tax? The whole thing of Polyev also coming in and calling that non-conference motion, which of course didn't even go, which we kind of knew wouldn't go through.
Oh, yeah, it was never going to go anywhere. It's a political stunt, and that's fine. I will say this: if you don't like the carbon tax, that's fine. I'm willing to have that conversation with you. And if you have better ideas to limit the amount of pollution that we as a nation are creating than the carbon tax, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. But if you don't like the carbon tax and your response is replace it with nothing, then you are being unserious. So if you've got a better idea than the carbon tax, that's cool. I'm happy to have the conversation, but you've got to come to the table with ideas as opposed to nothing.
But then what about the idea that he keeps he's been Trudeau's been pressured to give it up, but he said no.
Yeah. And to me, he's burned enough political capital on this. There's no reason to say no. You know what I mean? Like the political capital's burned, so you might as well just ride this thing out to the end. And he'll do that, and that's fine. I don't think the carbon tax in and of itself is actually really going to cost the guy the election. I think the carbon tax in a vacuum is fine. However, that combined with the cost of housing and cost of living inflation, I know that people would say the carbon tax and cost of living inflation go hand in hand. Really, it's a tiny percentage of as far as the inflation costs being associated with the carbon tax. But still, those things are far bigger problems for him, especially the housing aspect, than the carbon tax is ever going to be. So if Justin Trudeau is not prime minister in next fall, people are going to blame the carbon tax, but I think that is not looking at it properly. There's been some other things that are going on that, to me, are the real problem, and Trudeau is going to have to live with those things.
Well, I mean, like, if he were like, see, the thing is, like, there have been sort of things about him about that he should step down and all that good stuff, like, and a couple of names that have floated around. I mean, as to who would take over, Chrystia Freeland's name has popped around.
Mm-hmm.
Even Mark Carney's name had popped around. Like, well, I mean, what would you think of that? Of either of those?
Freeland, I think, is no. That's not. No. I just think there's going to be too much baggage there. Carney, I think, is a very interesting idea, and I think that he'd have a good chance to be the next Liberal leader. I think Trudeau gets one more election. Then he resigns, and then maybe they have a leadership race and Carney wins. But I don't think Freeland is a serious contender here. Well, I shouldn't say she's a serious contender. She'll be a serious contender. But I think if the Liberals want to turn the page and reinvigorate the party a little bit, they can't just have Justin Trudeau go away and then have Justin Trudeau's most high-profile cabinet minister take over. There wouldn't be enough separation politically for that to make sense, I don't think.
Yeah, like, so, like, and like, do you think Mark Carney would be in it? Like, so you think he'd be an interesting choice then? Like,
yeah, I think there would be a lot of interesting stuff about having Mark Carney in there, because if what you're smoking the Liberals on is, hey, you've handled the economy poorly, which in some senses they have, he'd be a guy that would come in with some new interesting ideas that I think Canadians would be willing to listen on. So I think that he'd be a good option for them. Again, they'd have to have a race before we officially say who's doing it and who's not and all that stuff. But I think that them doing something with Carney would make a lot of sense. But that's a long way out. We probably won't be into this leadership race until early 2026 unless something crazy happens.
So you don't perceive a federal election, but you don't see him calling it before 2025.
No, like he's just going to want to use the time he can, because if you're him and the polls are as messy as they are right now, you're in no rush to do it. The only way this changes is if Poilievre has some sort of disaster scandal and he says, all right, now's the time, let's go. But I just don't see it.
There was a piece though on Poilievre. I think that there's also a book on Pierre Poilievre, on his life and in politics, and like, did you see that as an interesting sort of thing? How that there was a column about it last week.
There's a book about Pierre Poilievre, and an old friend of mine wrote it. Yeah. I'll actually be talking to Andrew about that book coming up next week. So, I haven't had a chance to read Andrew's book yet. I want to, but I think it's an interesting concept. This guy is likely about to become prime minister. Let's find out about some stuff. Find out some stuff about him rather.
Yeah, I saw that piece there. Yeah, by Andrew Lawton there about that. Yeah, no, it'd be great. Yeah, no, I think it'd be interesting just to, and I think, and I also didn't realize he also does a podcast as well.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to talking with Andrew about that.
Oh, sounds good. We'll be listening. So how about you now? Let's talk a little bit about the Craig Needles podcast. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I talk about what's going on in London and how political stuff is impacting London on the Craig Needles podcast. And, I do the Friday roundtable with some characters. A lot of them people would recognize from the radio show, and I did that at the other place I used to work at. And it's cool. It's I'm lucky to do that. I'm lucky to be part of that. It's a very, very fun conversation, and it's a neat format. So I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, so you cover London and anything and around the world a little bit?
Well, yeah. So basically, I cover London stuff and then how stuff impacts London, essentially.
I see. So not like that the other place you used to be then?
Yeah. When I was at When I was at Chorus, I did everything. I did things all over the world. I did whatever sort of the biggest news item of the day was, and I still do the big news item of the day, but typically just how it impacts London. And I don't do all news all the time now because I'm doing the classic rock thing as well. So I'm spending a lot of time with that. So there's that conversation as well. So I have a chance to talk about the things I want to talk about. Put it that way.
Oh yeah, I know. So kind of like we've done here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing all sorts of things.
Yeah. So yeah. I think though, honestly, I feel it's a very interesting time at this point in media in this country right now.
I think so too. I think that what we saw with Bell spinning off a bunch of radio stations in mid-sized markets, I think that is going to be a sign of things to come. I think that we're going to see more of the big players, Chorus and Bell and Rogers, spin off their stations like that. They just don't return the profit year over year numbers that they want to see. Now, radio, my estimation, is still a profitable business.
Yep.
If you're willing to stand in there and say, okay, I want to make, this number of dollars each year, and we're going to run this radio station in a smart way, and we're going to be able to do that, great. I think that you can do it. If you want there to be year over year profits to satisfy the shareholders and do all the things at the meetings that the song and dances that the people at Bell and Rogers and Chorus want to do and need to do, radio is not going to be for you. Not the way that they want to do it at the very least, because they've realized that there's only a certain amount of money you can make in radio, which is fine. So that they have to do every year is cut costs in order to see profits increase. The companies that are doing it smart, and I work for one, which is good, realize that, you should have local talent. You should have people that are telling their listeners what's going on in their community. And maybe we're not going to be able to see profits increase every year, but we're going to see profits every year. Profits are still coming in. So I think that that's how you should be running radio stations. Obviously, Chorus and Bell and Rogers disagree, and we've already seen Bell spin off a few radio stations, and I think that will not be the last time that happens.
No, I don't think so either, and I think, and of course, Roger, there was actually just that there was just kind of a little bit that they're shutting down a lot. Like Rogers are shutting down their Pacific content side of it too.
Yeah, I saw that as well. So because so much of it is about cutting costs, so we can make the bottom line look nicer, and shareholders like that, and blah blah blah. And in the cell phone world, you can do that. All right, we're going to try to make more money every year. Blah blah. Great. It doesn't work quite that way in the radio world.
No, yeah. It was in this week's weekly briefing, that Pacific content. Yeah,
I saw that too. And it sucks for people who would have enjoyed that. That's too bad. But that's how those companies are doing things these days.
Yeah, and you were at Chorus for you were there for a number of years.
12 and a half.
Go ahead.
I was there for 12 and a half years.
Yep. And you were at Rogers as well.
I was there for 3.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I worked at Chime 570 News in Kitchener. Those were the only 2 stations they had there then. Now they have the country station. They bought that right as I was leaving. That's it was that was a cool spot to work. I worked with some really great people there. I got
570. That's a great station too.
Yeah, I worked with some really great people there. I got to be on the board for some people that had really great careers in this business, be it folks like Glenn Peltier, Lisa Drew, or Paul McPhee. Like, I got to work with some really cool people in that newsroom, Blair Adams, really awesome. And then on the FM side, I got to opt for George Michael's morning show. Like, I was so lucky to be able to do that. George and Tara they were so much fun to work with. They're really, really good and really, really really just nice, decent, kind people. And I really, really enjoyed working with both of them. And the fact that I got to, just on a fill-in basis, like from time to time, just push the buttons for that show. That was a really cool way to start my career that I was doing when I was 19 years old. So 20 years ago now, which is crazy.
It's interesting too. Yeah, I know. And and Farwell as well was there.
Yeah, I worked with Mike not that long. We were we worked together for a few months. So between him coming in and between me hitting the road, we worked together for a few months. And it was I like working with Mike too. I actually saw Mike when when he was in town to do a Ranger game, I went up to the press box to say hello and had a nice chat with Mike. And yeah.
Yeah, I know. And he's coming next week.
Oh, he's coming on? Cool. Oh, okay, cool. Well, I hope to tell Mike I said hello, and I hope you have a nice conversation.
Certainly will. We've got so we've got a few shows next week. I've got Steph Vivier coming on Monday.
Okay, I know Steph a little bit. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Gina Lawrence is coming in as well on Tuesday.
Oh, okay. I Gina and I were at 570 together. I was mostly at Chime when she was at 570 before she went out to the East Coast, but I know Gina a little bit too.
Yeah, so we got them. So yeah, no, I'll let Mike know you say hello. I'll let them all know you say hello.
Cool, very cool. Yeah, that's good.
We'll do that on air. We'll do some listener shout outs. I know you're a listener.
Yeah, well,
so
I appreciate listener shout outs. It really is a small industry.
It is.
As far as the number of people that you were, okay, I work with this person. Oh, so have I. Or it's like a 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon thing if you're working in radio, especially in Ontario. You work. And so I worked with all sorts, obviously tons of people, of course, and at Rogers, and now I'm here at Blackbird. So yeah, just everyone's worked with someone who's worked with someone. You know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. And and I mean, there's a lot, and even like the people that I've had a lot of it, I've had a lot of interesting people on too.
I'm sure you have. Yeah, that's very cool. I know that I've seen some of the lists, and yeah, it's cool. It's good for you. It's a fun conversation.
Yeah, I really, I enjoy this, and I'm really happy I've got the tools all here in front of me to do it. And where can people find you on? I'm at Broadcast Map on X, and you're at Needles on News.
Yeah, that's me. And it's I love Twitter. It's just it's fun, and I get to argue with people, which I really enjoy. I don't know why, but I really enjoy that. So I like going on there and talking about whatever's going on in the world. So it's cool.
Yeah, sounds good. And we've been connected there for years.
Yeah, for a long time. Back when I was at 980 and doing stuff there, and I know that you've been tweeting me for a long time. So yeah, it's cool. And and we're it's I'm lucky to have been doing this for as long as I have, and not everyone gets to do this for 20 years, and that's how long I've been doing it now. It's 20 years since I started at Rogers, and I've had a lot of really fun and really good experiences, and worked with some people that I really enjoy working with, and it's been really, really neat. So it's a cool business, and it's not for everybody. And, you have to sacrifice a little bit as far as sometimes how much cash you're bringing home. And certainly you have to sacrifice a little bit sometimes as far as, time you get to spend with family and whatnot. So there's that part of it too. So, but I enjoy it. And I still get to spend tons of time with my kids. Don't get me wrong. I just wish I could spend all of my time with my kids. But this is it's the next best thing, because when people say, well, if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life. By that definition, I have never worked a day in my life. And yeah, there are days when things don't go great. You don't like certain things. And as evidenced by my time at Chorus, sometimes you have fights with people, and that's fine. But I've never worked a day in my life from the perspective of every day that I've come in and done radio as my job. I've enjoyed the fact that radio is my job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and Nathan Smith as well.
Yeah, I worked with Nathan for a long time at 2 places, and I don't know. Did he tell you much about he and I transitioning from Kitchener to London together? Was that part of the podcast?
Yes, it was. Yeah, feel free to give it over in case people haven't had a chance to listen to that.
Oh, okay. So Nathan and I worked together at 570 News in Kitchener, and there were a couple other people there that worked with us. And Nathan had this idea, like, hey, what if I were to go to London and start up sort of a kind of an all news afternoon and morning show broadcast thing there, and get in at 980 at Chorus. And it worked out. And he was able to get to London, and he was the program director, and he hired me and a couple of the people who worked with, at 570 together, and we all kind of left together, and it was kind of an incident around there. So this would have been November of 2007. So it's a long time ago now, but it was kind of a big incident around there, and it was a big deal. And, 4 people leaving at the same time to all go to the same place, kind of kind of like rocked the foundation of the building a little bit, as I recall it. And there were some hurt feelings, there was some anger, but that's just, the way of the world sometimes. And we press on. But it was a pretty crazy day when all those resignations happened, because myself and the two other people resigned on the same day. So. And Nathan had already resigned, I guess, a week earlier. So yeah, it was pretty nuts, and it was that's a day I'm never going to forget in my career. Most people don't get the opportunity to kind of leave a job not only on their own terms, but kind of like having things go out with a bang on the way out. It's not that I wanted to mess things up at Rogers Kitchener; just it was the right opportunity for me, so I went and did it.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm surprised though that all news mornings and afternoons that I'm surprised that it actually was able to go through there at 980, because that's a chorus station. And
yeah, that was the really neat thing about it, is that was, as you know, Ali, that's Rogers' deal, right?
Yeah.
So I think that a couple of things helped us. One, there was no Rogers station in London already. Mm-hmm. There were the two AMs at the time were was it Standard or Astral that owned CJBK at the time when we came in? I think it was Astral. Either way. So there was an Astral station. There was a chorus station. So there wasn't a Rogers station that had already, beaten everyone to the bell on the all news. And with the results that had been put up at 680 in Toronto, the results that had been put up at 570, and some of the other Rogers stations around the country, out on the East Coast and whatnot, with the all news format, Dave Farrow, who was the GM at Chorus London at the time, obviously thought that this was something that made sense for 980 and for London. He was looking to do some things with London, with that AM signal. And we did a really good job there. Like when Nathan was hired there as the program director, he was 25. I was 22. Like they hired, by most people's definition, kids to run that radio station. And we did a really, really good job with it. And I go from reporter to talk show host, and Nathan obviously goes from being the PD there to being the PD in Toronto. Like those were good hires. They made good hires and they brought us all in. And then of course the people above us eventually get booted out and off we go. But and then off I go in kind of a pretty ugly divorce. But it was
wasn't it a Thursday? I think it was a Thursday you were elected.
It was a Thursday. You're right. It was a Thursday morning. I want to say July 23rd, if I recall correctly.
I think it was, yeah. So
July 23rd, 2020.
Like, what happened?
All right, let's talk about that. It's been 4 years almost. So
if you're okay to share it.
Oh, I'm okay to share. Like I said, it's been 4 years. So here's the way it went. It was pretty clear to me for a little while that I had very different views as to how to run a radio station compared to not necessarily the people in London who are running things, but certainly the people outside of London. And they thought things should be a certain way. I thought things should be another way. Just like how to use social media as an example. There's some disagreement there. And how certain programming decisions should be made. There's some disagreement there. How staff was treated in the newsroom. There's some disagreement there. And something I'm going to point out, and I think it's pretty clear. We had a really, really good staff when I was at 980. And I'm not going to sit here and name all the people because I don't want to make it sound like I'm speaking for anybody. But there are a lot of people who were really, really good employees at Chorus who don't work there anymore because the way that the company was being run, was not great. And there were some people that that just knew that I've got to get out of here, even though I like the work I do. I just can't stay here. And because of the people that were running things were not particularly, decent people. And that's fine. So it was pretty clear that I had some disagreements, but I thought that on some level, my tenure there would have made it so they would not have wanted to, fight me and get rid of me. They're just going to wait for me to leave on my own. And that's not the way it went. So I got an email one day saying, "Hey, come on, let's have a meeting with the program director who was there." And I was not quite in the office yet, so I was about to walk into work, and I basically had a half hour where I knew what was about to happen. You know what I mean? Like I knew what was going to go down. And I had a half hour to adjust to that and think about how this is going to go, what's going to happen next, and all that stuff. So I get in, and that was it. It was the meeting from Goodfellas, and I knew it was coming. Poor Tommy didn't, but I did. And off I went. So basically, even before I was out of course, I was already thinking about, hey, what am I going to do next, and how is this going to go? I don't want to talk about much about the legal stuff, but the legal stuff was uglier for me than it was for most people. Just say that, and it wound up being on a lot of levels a blessing from the perspective. I'm so glad that I'm at Blackburn now.
Yep.
I love it here. The management here encourages and wants to help you get to where you want to go. The people that run the radio station here and the news department here, like Dan Wiley run the radio station, Scott Kitchen were in the news department, and John Eisler, our general manager, they and I feel very similarly about the best and smartest ways to run radio stations. Which is good for me because I'm a guy that says what he thinks. And even if I know that management is not necessarily on board with what I'm thinking, or I say how I feel. I let that off my chest. So it's a good environment for me to be in. And we'll get back to this in a second, but the Covent Garden Market Studio is a great example of this. Whereas I'm an ideas guy. I like to propose things. And at Chorus, those ideas got shot down because whatever reason, mostly because the people there lacked vision. Here, oh no, let's do the idea. Great plan. You know what I mean? It's a much better environment for me. So as ugly as the breakup with Chorus was, and there are some friendships that one friendship that I had for a really long time that was an important friendship in my life that kind of went by the wayside because of the breakup at Chorus. That part of it sucks, but for me, it was a blessing in disguise at the time, because I got to, eventually it led to the point where I got to come here. And in between going from Chorus to Blackburn, I did some time at the Free Press, which was really fun. I worked at Bell for a week. So I was a busy guy sort of in my little hiatus there. And that was a cool experience. And I enjoyed that. So as much as that was kind of an ugly thing, and there are still some ugly feelings surrounding it, I'm better off where I am now than I was there, and I'm glad that it went down the way that it did.
Yeah, and then they replaced, and the thing was they replaced you with syndication.
Yeah, they had Bill Kelly show out of Hamilton was piped into London, and I didn't listen a ton, but I listened a little bit, depending on what was going on. Obviously, I was working at a different radio station pretty quick after that, so I was listening to the one that I worked at more frequently.
And then he was canned.
Yeah, then Bill gets let go, and I don't know Bill all that well. We've maybe talked one or two times, but he sort of had the same experience I did. Only they let Bill kind of go out on his own terms on the air. That is not what happened with me. So that was interesting when they let Bill be able to go do that. But it was something that. When it happened with Bill, I was not necessarily surprised. Like, obviously there's a clock on these things with a company like that. And if you're there long enough, they're going to want to get you eventually and blah, blah, blah. So it's too bad. And you know what? I just felt it didn't serve London the way it wound up being set up. And I'll say this, when we already talked about him earlier, when the talk block at 980 was me and Andrew.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
Andrew and I would have some disagreements on certain things politically, of course, but no matter how you felt about certain issues, either Andrew or I were on your side. You know what I mean? Like, there are some things that Andrew and I agree on, of course, but I thought that they didn't realize the strength of what they had when Andrew and I were doing 6 hours of talk radio on that radio station. They didn't realize how good that was. And now if you look at things there, it's just mostly network programming and during the day, and you have Devin in the morning and Mike in the afternoon, and that's fine. When Mike's around, obviously he's got a lot of hockey play-by-play responsibilities and all that stuff. So there are days that you're going to go there, and there's going to be Devin's programming in the morning, and that's going to be the extent of the local stuff going on. And that's just the decision management's made there. And there are some people who are there who I am friends with, and I hope that they're successful. The number of people who are there who I'm friends with is a lot less now than it was even when I left, just because so many people after I've gone have subsequently left behind me.
Yep.
But it's not that I have ill will towards, the station as a concept. I hope that there's a 980 CFPL forever in some form, in some way. I just hope that at some point the people who own and run 980 CFPL care as much about the existence of the product as I do. And I'm someone who doesn't even work there anymore. And that hasn't been the case for a long time. And that's the result you're going to get.
Awesome stuff. And Craig, I look forward to having you back for a part 2 as well down the road.
Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, you tell me
when. Yeah, feel free to book something in soon.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. Maybe later in the summer, close to the fall, whatever it is, we'll figure something out. But yeah, this is a good time.
Sounds good. And we will be back. I'll be back with you on Monday. And I will say, stay tuned.